Talking about the concept of geomagnetism. Now, to start with, we will understand what is a basic magnetic property. So, if I have a sheet of paper with me and I have some iron fillings or iron nails on the top, what I do is, let's say I have a sheet of paper, I have some iron fillings on the top and I have a piece of magnet below. Now when I bring a piece of magnet below, what would happen? These iron fillings would automatically move and adjust into certain fashion, and that is how we understand the magnetic property of any magnet or the concept of magnetism. Now the main idea here is the extension of the magnetic field is maximum towards or near the source. And if I move away from the source, the influence of the magnetic property decreases, or I can say the magnetic field decreases as I go away from the source. So this is how we understand a simple magnet. Now Earth being so complex, understanding the geomagnetism on the Earth is a very complex phenomena. There has been a lot of discussions regarding the Earth's magnetic field, and to start with, I could say during the age of exploration, where different continents were being found and different places were being explored, at that time there were numerous instruments that were used. The most common instrument was compass, that was used for understanding the magnetic north, and at the same time Chinese invented a device that was known as Xi'an, and this device used to point, the spoon here used to point towards the magnetic north. So wherever you keep this device, it would have a different angle of rotation, I could say, or angle of movement of this spoon. So with this, there was some reason that helped people to understand there is some phenomena that is going around in the interior of the earth that is leading to such magnetic fields on the earth. To understand this, there were three terminologies that were later on demarcated. That was the geographical north, the magnetic poles, and the geomagnetic poles. So we'll start with the very simple ones, that's the geographic poles. So we understand on the globe we have the lines of latitudes that run parallel and the line of longitudes that converge around the North Pole and the South Pole. So geographical North Pole and South Pole in very simple terms can be explained at the point of convergence of the longitudes. So when I say these are the lines of convergence of these are the point where the longitudes converge. In the north it would be known as the North Pole, and in the south it would be known as the South Pole. Now geographical poles are also known as true poles. So I can say this is either geographical north or true north, and this is geographical south or true south. So this is the very fundamental pole that we need to understand, that's the geographic pole. Now once we are familiar with the geographical poles, next move on to the magnetic poles. Now if I draw the diagram for the actual magnetic field that is happening on the earth, it would look something like this. So here I can say this is the real or the actual magnetic field of the earth. So what can you see here is you have lines converging here and lines that are moving away from here. Now if I bring a magnet, what would happen? The magnet would dip vertically, and the region where the magnet would dip vertically would be the magnetic poles. So I have a magnet here, and this magnet, if dips vertically, it would become the magnetic pole, and since this is in the north, it would be known as the magnetic north, and this is in the south, it would be known as the magnetic south pole. So this is how we understand the magnetic north poles and the magnetic south poles. Now the most important to understand is the geomagnetic poles. I have a diagram here. Now that was what we have seen in the previous diagram was the real or the actual magnetic field. Now I am replacing that with a bar magnet that you can see in the center. So this is a bar magnet. So obviously if I am replacing the real magnetic field with a bar magnet, there would be some variations or some differences, and those differences would be seen with this bar magnet. Now as you can see there, what we are trying to do here is we are trying to approximate the real magnetic field. I repeat, we are approximating the real magnetic field and not the magnetic poles. So when I am trying to approximate the real magnetic fields with those of the bar magnet, I get the geographical north pole and the geomagnetic north pole and the geomagnetic south pole. Now again, geomagnetic north pole would be this. So all the poles that are pointing towards the geographical north would be north. So magnetic north would also be in that side, and geomagnetic north would be again in the same direction, and this would be geomagnetic south pole. So this is by convention what we understand. But if I try to understand the dipoles of this magnet, we can see the magnetic lines moving in this fashion. That means all the lines, the magnetic lines, are converging here and they are diverging at this point. Since they are converging here and they are diverging here, this becomes the north and this becomes the south of the magnet. That is again by the convention of physics in magnetism, that we have the lines that diverge from the north of a magnet and they converge towards the south of the magnet. So this is how we understand that within this bar magnet, this would be south and this would be north. But when we are talking about the actual condition on the earth, or when we are talking about the actual settings, we go by the convention. Everything which is towards the geographical north would be mentioned as north. So you have the geomagnetic north and magnetic north in the same direction as you have the geographical north, and again the same thing repeats for the south. So these are the three terminologies that we try to understand. Now it's very important to understand the difference between the magnetic fields, the geomagnetic fields. So for that there were a lot of experiments that were done, and finally there were two things that were explained, that is the magnetic declination and the magnetic inclination. But before that we must understand the various causes that lead to geomagnetic field. So if I say you have this as the exterior of the earth, interior of the earth has hot molten lava, and this hot molten material or magma is constantly generating some electrical impulse, and that is affecting the existence on the crust, I could say, or the outer surface of the earth. So one of the primary cause of the geomagnetic field is the interior of the earth. That's the primary cause. Now if I talk about, you have sun here and sun is radiating harmful radiations, but how are we protected from these harmful radiations when we are on the earth? The only thing that protects us from such harmful radiations is the geomagnetic field of the earth. So I can say the geomagnetic field protects us from the harmful radiations that we receive from the sun, and again the magnetic field leads to various kind of anomalies that can be in the form of mountains, folds or faults, and that is prevalent on the across the earth, as we have already talked about in the lesson on seafloor spreading and plate tectonics, how these anomalies affect the existing behavior on the earth's surface. So these are some of the primary causes that lead to Earth's geomagnetic field, and since this geomagnetic field is originating from the interior of the earth, we need to understand something that is very different from the traditional compass that we were using to understand the geomagnetic field. Now if I talk about that, you have the two terminologies that you must be very familiar with. The first is the magnetic declination and the next is the magnetic inclination. Now you have the geographical north and I have a pen here. Now consider this to be the needle of the compass. The needle of the compass can move only in the horizontal direction. So if I am moving this needle in the horizontal direction, I am generating this component which is the geomagnetic north, or I can say this is the horizontal component of the magnet. So the line formed by the true north or the geographical north, the angle formed by the true north or the geographical north and the horizontal component of the magnet would be known as declination. But in real world, what happens? Our instrument is made in such a fashion that it moves only horizontally, but the interior of the earth, as we discussed in the causes, is affecting the geomagnetic field. So if it is, this compass is allowed to move freely, this would dip, and if this dips towards the interior of the earth, this becomes the original magnetic field and the vertical component of the magnet. So I could say this is the vertical component. So the angle formed between the horizon or the vertical component would be known as the inclination. So if I am talking about just the horizontal world, I can say the angle between the true north or the geographical north and the geomagnetic north would be, or the horizontal component of the magnet would be the declination. But if I allow this compass to move freely, the angle between the vertical component and the horizon would be the inclination. So these two terms are very important to understand. Now based on this, there have been mapping of the world. So when we move on to understand the mapping of the world, you have the first map here that talks about the magnetic declination. Now magnetic declination, the lines which join the points with the same magnetic declination are known as isogonic lines. Now you can see the green line here. So this is one of the lines, this is another line, and you have the third line here. So all these three lines are the lines of zero magnetic declination or no magnetic declination, and these are known as agonic lines. So if we talk about on the actual phenomena on our world map, we can say you have just three lines which do not have any magnetic declination, and they are lines of zero magnetic declination, or also known as agonic lines. Now as we talked about, declination is the angle between the true north and the horizontal component. You can see two different colors, one is the red and another is the blue. So red is positive declination and that is towards the east. So you have the declination towards the east. So if this is north, you have the declination towards the east on these red lines, while on these blue lines you have the declination towards the west. So this is the angle of declination and it would be slightly towards the west. So if you say you have the geographical north and the geographical south, and this is the magnetic north or geomagnetic north and geomagnetic south, it would be incorrect because it could be either this side or this side. And usually people say this declination is around 10 to 11 degrees or 10.47 degrees. But that's usual. It is not applicable uniformly across every part of the world. So you have magnetic declination that varies from region to region on the world map. So this is what is magnetic declination and the isogonic lines. The next we understand is the magnetic inclination or the magnetic dip. Now as we talked about, if you have a magnetic dipole that is allowed to rotate freely, what would happen? It would have the compass, the needle would dip vertically, and this is explained by magnetic inclination, or we also call it dip. The lines that join equal magnetic inclination are known as isoclinic lines. So magnetic inclination or magnetic dip is one and the same thing, and the lines joining points of equal magnetic inclination would be known as the isoclinic lines. Now you can see the green line here. This line is the line of zero magnetic inclination. It is known as aclinic line or aclinal line, and it is also known as magnetic equator. So this is what is the magnetic equator. As you can see on this map, this is not a straight line that runs across as the equator on the map, the geographical equator. So this is what is the magnetic equator. Now all the lines on the top, as you can see, are in red, and all the lines towards the south are in blue. Now blue indicates dip is upwards and negative, while red indicates dip is downwards and dip is positive. Okay, so you have red that indicates a downward dip which is positive, and blue that indicates an upward dip that is negative. So here we understand the concept of magnetic declination, the changes in the magnetic declination on the globe or on the earth. Now if I try to draw this on the world map, I can say you have the globe here. The line that is exactly perpendicular to the geographical north pole and geographical south pole would be the geographical equator. So you have geographical north pole and geographical south pole. The line that runs perpendicular to it would be the geographical equator. Magnetic equator, we have already seen, deviates or moves away from the geographical equator on various regions. So that is how the magnetic equator is formed. And finally, you have the best fitting dipole that we have explained here. So you have the geomagnetic north pole and the geomagnetic south pole. The line that is exactly perpendicular to the geomagnetic poles would be the geomagnetic equator. So this is the line of geomagnetic equator. And as you can see here, what is shown is the declination of the horizontal component from the true north, and that can be towards either west or east depending upon the region on the earth where we are located. So it's very important to understand few concepts here. First, the declination can be either towards east or west depending on the region where we are on the earth's surface, and secondly, it's important not to get confused between the magnetic north and south and magnetic north and south of a bar magnet and what is happening on the real earth. The next is the concept of paleomagnetism. Now paleomagnetism, as the name suggests, is the magnetism within the rocks. So what is happening here is you have rocks that have some magnetic properties that is left behind during the process of origin, and this is what is known as paleomagnetism. Now there are various ways you can understand this. The first is the polar wandering and the continental drift. So if I say you have polar wandering, means the magnetic poles keep on changing from time to time, and this has been recorded due to the continental drift or moving away of the continents, and also the plate tectonic activities, which talks about the converging and the diverging plates. So in both the cases you have the explanations for polar wandering. But if I talk about seafloor spreading, as we have already done in the class on seafloor spreading, what is happening? You have the oceanic ridge, and towards the oceanic ridge you have the maximum eruption that is taking place, and the magma is getting crystallized at the time it is spreading towards from the oceanic ridge. So this is the time where the magma is getting crystallized. Now say at 10,000 years there was certain magnetic field and there was certain crystallization. At 1000 years ago, if I talk about this magma crystallization would vary, and this could be understood by the concept of understanding the rock structures within the sea. So I can say the rocks have different magnetic properties. So you have the polar reversals that can be seen in the rocks. So you have North Pole to South Pole and South Pole to North Pole. So you can have alternate arrangements of rocks or different gradations in the arrangement of rocks, and those are formed by those can be understood by the polar reversal concepts. So this is where the sea floor spreading explains the marine magnetic anomalies. So to understand the marine magnetic anomalies, we need to understand the concept of sea floor spreading, but the concept of polar wandering can be well explained by continental drift or plate tectonics. The next concept that we would be talking about is remnant magnetization. Remnant magnetization means if I have brought a magnet close to a iron filling, I have that magnet close to an iron filling for some time, and after that I remove that magnet away, but that iron filling or that iron nail would still have some magnetic properties left on it, and that is what is remnant magnetization. So remnant magnetization is the leftover magnetic properties on the rocks even when the external magnetic field is removed, and these can be understood by three means: the thermal, the deuteral and the chemical remnant magnetization. So first we will talk about the deuteral remnant magnetization. This can be either depositional or post-depositional. So depositional occurs during the process of magnetization and deposition, while post-depositional occurs after the process of magnetization is over. The chemical magnetization, you can explain the formation of hematite from magnetite, and that explains why certain sand beds are red in color. So that explains the chemical remnant magnetization. And finally you have the thermal remnant magnetization that explains the iron titanium oxides present in the basalt or the igneous rocks. So you have iron titanium oxides that are present in the basalt or igneous rocks, and also you have the Curie point that varies for each material or each rock. Now Curie point is the critical temperature at which the rock loses all its magnetism or its magnetic properties, and this Curie point or Curie temperature varies for each rock. So if I say for a rock, say magnetite, it would be around 580, but for basalt it can be around 900. Okay, so this Curie point varies for individual rock. So we have talked about the concept of polar wandering and remnant magnetization. Now the most important concept is detection of magnetic field. How do we detect whether there is a magnetic field in a certain region or not? There are various ways in which people used to detect this phenomena. The first or the foremost was the movement of animals. So the movement of migratory birds and sea turtles led to understanding of the phenomena of geomagnetic field. So magnetic field detection in the prior ages were done by the movement of the migratory birds. Then you have the seismo-electromagnetism that talks about the earthquake activities and the effect on the magnetic field. You have the detection of the anomalies of magnet. So you have anomalies means variation in the actual magnetic field. You have magnetometers that determine the magnetic property. Now these were mainly used during the World War II, where you had the steel hulled submarines that were used, and these magnets were used to detect the submarines under the water. Now these magnetometers can be of two types. They can be either scalar or vector in nature. Those which are scalar, they try to explain the total strength of the magnetic field, while those which are vector try to explain the magnetic field component relative to the spatial magnetic field. Then you have, by means of satellites, you have the various satellites like MAXIT that determines the magnetic field of the earth. You have 3D vector axis rotations in these satellites, and finally you have the geomagnetic observatories which determine the geomagnetic reversals and the geomagnetic polarities of the region. So these geomagnetic observatories usually have two kinds of instruments. One is the variometer. Variometer talks about the variations in the actual magnetic field, and finally you have the absolute instruments. Absolute instruments measures the actual magnetic field. So these are some of the ways in which you can detect a magnetic field. So we have talked about the various types of magnetic fields, the causes of geomagnetism, and the three basic terminologies in the field of geomagnetism. In the next session we will be covering the concept of geosyncline, which is a kind of foundation stone to understand the concept of mountain building process. You can subscribe to our channel for any further updates and leave any suggestions or questions as comment below. We will be more than happy to answer those. Have a good day ahead.